Now, before we try to insert or retrieve or try to delete anything from the Firestore database, the first step is always to set up the Firestore database. So if you go to console.firebase.google.com on your dashboard, first of all, you can see that we have added our iOS application, we have added our Android application. And this has been done before, so if you haven't watched those videos, I highly recommend that you watch those because it goes into great detail of how to set up Firebase for iOS as well as Android. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to check out Cloud Firestore. That is the document database on the Firebase platform that we will be inserting, retrieving, updating, deleting the records. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Cloud Firestore, and it takes us to the home page of Cloud Firestore. And it has a button over here to say create the database. Now, this is the first time we are landing on this page, and we don't have our Firestore database created, so that's why we can see this page. Let's go ahead and click on Create Database. Now, this is a very, very important step. It's basically asking that, hey, do you want to start in a production mode or do you want to start in the test mode? The difference between the production mode and the test mode is that if you start in the production mode, then there is a security by default. You cannot write or read or delete from the database unless you are authenticated. In the test mode, you will be able to perform read, write, update, delete operation without being authenticated. So since we're just starting out, we're going to start in the test mode. All right, and then we can do next. This is fine. It's just saying Cloud Firestore location. We will enable it. And now it's going to provision and create our Cloud Firestore database. When it creates a database, it's going to be completely empty because, well, we just created the database, and then eventually we can add items to it. So it's going to set up the security rules. It's going to go through all of those different things. And now this is our database looks like. You can see that our database doesn't really have anything. We don't have any collection. We don't have any data, nothing. Now we can go ahead and insert an item into our Cloud Firestore database. So I'm going to go back to the code. And what we want to do is when the person presses the add button or add task button, which is right over here, we want to take the value in the text box, which is this one, and we want to insert that value into the Firestore database. But the first question is, well, how do we access the value in the text box? And this is done by using the text editing controller. So let's go ahead and try to use the text editing controller. I'm going to go to the to-do list page, and I don't think we need to get access to the main Dart, so we can remove that file. And I'm going to go ahead and say Final Text Editing Controller. We will call it controller. I'm using an underscore over here to indicate that this is a private variable and this will not be available to the outside world, outside of this class. So we have created the controller. We do have to assign this controller to our text field. So our text field is right here. So we do have to assign it. So I'm going to go inside the text field and I'm going to say controller equals to, or controllers is underscore controller. Great. There we go. So this means that whenever we type something in the text field, this controller can capture it and we can do something with it. Now we're going to go to the flat button, which is add task, and on pressed, I'm going to go ahead and call add task, which indicates that we are going to be adding a particular task. So this function will be our own function, and you can see that this function is not really implemented. So we're going to go ahead and implement this function by saying add task, and this again underscore is indicating that this is a private function which is not really available to the outside world. But now the question is, well, at this moment we want to actually insert the task to the Firestore database. And since we want to add it to the Firestore database, we will go ahead and import the package that will allow us to work with the Firestore. And that package is called the Cloud Firestore package. And we will import the cloud firestore.dart file. Perfect. Now inside the add task, now since we have already imported the cloud Firestore right here, we can implement the add task. So I'm just going to go ahead and say Firebase Firestore dot instance dot collection. So this is the name of the collection you're going to provide. If the collection does not exist, it will create the collection. If the collection does exist, then it's going to use the existing collection. So I'm going to say that my collection name is to-dos. And collection basically means that it will hold similar items. You can think of it as a table in a relational database, but keep in mind that Firebase does store its item in a collection because it's a document database, not a relational database. So I'm going to say to-dos will be the name of my collection, and I'm going to add an item to it. And you can see that when I type add, it says that you can pass in a map, so which is kind of like a dictionary. So let's go ahead and pass in a dictionary with a title. So this will have a title, and title will be the name that you are typing in a text box. So we can get it from the controller. So controller.text, right? And then after inserting the record, we can go ahead and say controller.text equals to empty, because we just want to clear out the text box. And that's it. Let's go ahead and refresh, restart our server basically, or our the server. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and write something over here, wash the car, and I'm going to say add the task. You can see that it did refresh, or it did remove the task from the text box. But that's great, but we want to see that if our task went all the way to the Firestore database or not. So I'm going to go to the Firestore database, and I'm going to try to refresh. And there we go. You can see the first thing to note over here is the to-dos collection. The second thing to note over here is the new document has been added. And you can also see that the title of that document is wash the car. Pretty cool, right? That we didn't really have to write that much code to get it to work. We simply wrote the minimum amount of code, and it ended up in Firestore database. Now, one of the most important things to note over here is that this particular document weird ID that you see, it's known as the document ID. And this is a unique ID for every document. So if I create a new document, it will have a different ID. Let's go ahead and create a new document. I'm going to go ahead and say feed the dog and add a task. Let's go. And you can see that I didn't really have to refresh it. Here we go, feed the dog. This document IDs are very important because if you want to delete a task or update a task or do anything with a particular task, particular document, you need to know their document ID. So very, very important that you use these document IDs whenever you are performing a task that is related to a particular document. Very important. All right. So there you have it. We were able to create a task through our application, and we were able to save the task all the way to the Firestore database. This is all great, but our list of tasks still displays your task here. So what we want to do is we want to display our task from the Firestore database over here. So how do we do it? Let's go ahead and learn it in the next lecture.